I kissed my best friend's fiancé, and I want more. I didn't mean to kiss Nicholas Anderson in the supply closet of my wedding planning office. Really, I didn't. But when your college ex, the one who ghosted you 5 years ago, shows up as your best friend's fiancé, sometimes mistakes happen. Sexy, 6-foot-tall mistakes with perfect cheekbones and a smile that still makes my knees weak. But let me back up. My morning started normally enough. Triple shot espresso in one hand, color swatches in the other, and my assistant Devin frantically waving the day's schedule in my face. "Jordan, you cannot be late for the Anderson-Wright consultation." Devin's perfectly shaped eyebrows disappeared into his bangs. "It's Sebastian's wedding." I rolled my eyes, adjusting my navy blazer. "Relax, honey. Sebastian has been my best friend since diapers. He'd forgive me for being fashionably late to my own funeral." But his fiancé, the mysterious Nick who Seb won't shut up about? Please. After planning weddings for New York's elite for 3 years, I can handle one more rich boy with daddy's black card. Oh, sweet summer child. Past Jordan was so naive. I breezed into my office, nearly choking on my coffee when I saw who was perched on my white leather sofa. Dark hair styled just messy enough to look effortless, sharp jawline, and those amber eyes I used to get lost in during late-night study sessions. Nicholas fucking Anderson. The same Nicholas who'd made me believe in love during sophomore year of college, then disappeared without a trace. The same Nicholas whose last words to me were, "See you tomorrow," before he transferred schools without warning. And there he was, sitting next to my best friend Sebastian, who was beaming like he'd won the lottery. "Jordan!" Sebastian jumped up, pulling me into a bear hug. "Finally, meet my fiancé, Nicholas." Nicholas stood slowly, and I swear time stopped. He was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, but all I could see was the boy in ripped jeans who used to steal kisses between classes. "Nice to meet you," he said smoothly, extending his hand. His face was carefully blank, but I caught the slight tremor in his fingers. Two could play this game. "Charmed," I drawled, shaking his hand with my most professional smile. "Though I feel like we've met before, perhaps at the Williams-Mitchell wedding last spring." A flicker of something, relief, gratitude, crossed his face. "I don't believe so. I've been in Hong Kong until recently." Sebastian, bless his oblivious heart, was too excited to notice the tension crackling between us. "Isn't this perfect? My best friend planning my wedding. Nicholas, you'll love Jordan. He's the best in the business." "I'm sure he is," Nicholas murmured, his eyes never leaving mine. The next hour was torture. Pure, exquisite torture. I maintained my professional demeanor while discussing venues and color schemes, but every time Nicholas spoke, I was transported back to stolen moments in library stacks and midnight confessions under starlit skies. "For the reception," Nicholas said, "I was thinking something intimate. I've always preferred private celebrations." The way he emphasized private made heat crawl up my neck. "Private can be good," I replied, proud of how steady my voice was. Though in my experience, the most memorable moments often happen spontaneously. Sebastian's phone buzzed. "Sorry, work emergency. Nicholas, can you handle the rest? Jordan will take good care of you." Oh, the universe has a sick sense of humor. The moment Sebastian left, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Nicholas stood pacing to the window. "Jordan, don't." I busied myself with my tablet. "Let's keep this professional. I'm happy for you and Sebastian." "Are you?" He turned, and suddenly he was too close. "Because you're doing that thing with your left eyebrow that you always did when you were lying." "You lost the right to read my expressions when you disappeared 5 years ago," I snapped, backing away. Unfortunately, away led straight into my supply closet. Nicholas followed because of course he did. I had my reasons. "Congratulations. Now about the venue." "Jordan." His hand caught my wrist, and damn him, the touch still sent electricity through my body. "We need to talk about what happened." "What happened is you're marrying my best friend," I hissed, trying to ignore how good he smelled. And I'm going to make sure it's the perfect wedding because Sebastian deserves that. And what do you deserve? I didn't mean to kiss him, but he was looking at me with those eyes, and his thumb was drawing circles on my wrist, and 5 years of questions were burning in my throat. So I kissed him, or he kissed me. Does it matter who moved first when you're both falling? It lasted 3 seconds, or 3 lifetimes. Then my tablet chimed with Sebastian's message, "On my way back. Hope you two are getting along." We sprang apart like we'd been electrocuted. Nicholas's lips were slightly parted, his carefully styled hair messed up where my fingers had apparently made themselves at home. "Jordan," he breathed. The office door opened. "Sorry that took so long," Sebastian called out. "Did I miss anything important?" Have you ever tried to maintain your professional composure while your ex, who you definitely didn't just kiss in a supply closet, discusses wedding flowers with your best friend? Let me tell you, it's an Olympic-level sport. "The peonies would be perfect," I said, deliberately looking at my tablet instead of at Nicholas, who was standing way too close as we toured the Rosewood Manors garden. "They'll be in season for a June wedding." "I love peonies," Sebastian gushed. "Remember when we talked about them at dinner last week, Nicholas?" Nicholas made a non-committal sound, his shoulder brushing mine as he leaned in to inspect a bloom. I remember something else catching my attention that night. I nearly dropped my tablet. Was he talking about seeing me at the restaurant? I'd been there with a client and our eyes had met across the room. I'd spent the entire dinner pretending not to notice him watching me. "The wine was excellent," Sebastian agreed, completely missing the undercurrent. "Oh shoot, that's my father calling. 5 minutes?" As Sebastian walked away, I spun to face Nicholas. "Are you trying to get us caught?" "Maybe I'm tired of pretending." He stepped closer and I backed up until I hit the garden wall. "Aren't you exhausted, Jordan?" "The only thing exhausting me is your drama queen tendencies," I retorted, though my heart was racing. "Now about the table settings." "The table settings can wait. We need to see the wine cellar for the tasting menu." Which is how I found myself following Nicholas down narrow stone steps into the manor's historical wine cellar, because apparently I never learn. "Watch your step," I warned automatically. "The stones can be—" The heavy door swung shut behind us with an ominous click. "Tricky," I finished lamely. I tried the handle. Locked, of course. "Well," Nicholas said, amusement coloring his voice in the dim lighting, "this is familiar. If you're referring to that time in the library archives, when you claimed we needed to research medieval architecture, we did research, eventually." His laugh echoed in the confined space, and something in my chest loosened. For a moment, it felt like those carefree college days before everything imploded. "I tried to find you," I admitted quietly, "after you left." Nicholas was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't respond. "I know, I saw your messages, your emails. Why didn't you answer?" I hated how vulnerable my voice sounded. He sighed, sliding down to sit against a wine rack. "My family's company was tanking. We were about to lose everything. Then Sebastian's father offered a partnership. Through marriage?" The pieces clicked into place. "That's why you're marrying Sebastian? A business arrangement?" "It's not that simple." "Really? Because from where I'm standing—" "Then come sit down," he interrupted. "Because this story requires wine and I'm conveniently surrounded by it." "We are not stealing wine from my client's cellar." "Please, I technically own half of it through the merger." He was already examining bottles. "Ah, perfect. 2015 Bordeaux." "Nicholas Anderson, you are not opening that, and you're opening it." He grinned, that devastating smile that always meant trouble. "Come on, Jordan, live a little." "I live plenty," I protested, but found myself sitting beside him anyway. Our shoulders touched, and neither of us moved away. 2 sips in, Nicholas spoke. "My father had a heart attack when the company started failing. The doctors said the stress— I couldn't watch everything he built crumble. When Mr. Wright offered to save us through a merger with the condition that—" He stopped. That you marry his son, I finished softly. Sebastian is a good person. He deserves better than a business transaction. So do you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Nicholas turned to face me, and in the dim cellar lighting, his eyes were luminous. Do you ever wonder... The cellar door creaked open. Hello? Mr. Hayes? Mr. Anderson? We jumped apart as Devon's voice floated down. The venue coordinator found the spare key. Mr. Wright is looking for you both. I scrambled up, brushing off my pants and praying I didn't look as flustered as I felt. Nicholas rose more slowly, but as he passed me on the stairs, he whispered, I wonder about us every day. I was still standing there, heart pounding, when Devon cleared his throat. Also, Jordan, you might want to see this. He held out his phone, showing a business news website. The headline made my blood freeze. Wright-Anderson merger. The wedding of the year hides darker secrets. And below it, a photo of Nicholas and me in what appeared to be a very compromising position in my office supply closet. 24. Hours with my best friend's fiancé, in Vegas. My stomach lurched as I stared at Devon's phone. The photo was grainy but clear enough. Nicholas pressing me against the supply closet wall, my fingers tangled in his hair. The timestamp showed yesterday afternoon. Delete it, Nicholas said sharply, reaching for the phone. Devon pulled it back. Honey, it's already trending. Yeah, wedding planner affair is number 3 on Twitter. I'm gonna be sick, I muttered, loosening my tie. The wine from the cellar wasn't helping. Nicholas's hand found the small of my back, steadying me. Even now, his touch sent electricity through my body. Breathe, Jordan, we'll handle this. Handle what? Sebastian's voice made us all jump. He bounded down the cellar steps, waving his phone. Oh, that ridiculous photo? Please, I've known Jordan since we were kids. He practically lives in that supply closet organizing swatches. I blinked, guilt churning in my stomach. Sebastian, Save it, Sebastian laughed, throwing an arm around my shoulders. The paparazzi are just trying to create drama because they're bored. Though speaking of drama, he waved his phone again. Dad's called an emergency board meeting in Vegas. Nicholas, we're flying out tonight. Jordan, you're coming too. We need to start planning the bachelor party anyway. I tried not to show my relief, but Nicholas's knowing glance said he caught it anyway. His fingers brushed my wrist as he passed, a touch so light it could have been accidental. It wasn't. 2 hours later, I was on the Wright family jet, because of course they had one, trying not to notice how Nicholas's leg pressed against mine every time we hit turbulence. Sebastian had passed out in the front cabin, leaving us alone in dangerous proximity. Stop fidgeting, Nicholas murmured, his breath warm against my ear. Stop breathing on me, I shot back, but didn't move away. His lips curved. Make me. You're impossible. But I was smiling too, and for a moment it felt like college again. Just us, trading barbs and heated looks. Then his hand found my thigh under the blanket I'd been using, and suddenly the cabin felt too hot, too small. His thumb traced lazy circles that were definitely not accidental. Nicholas, I warned, my voice embarrassingly breathy. Yes? He looked perfectly innocent, but his hand slid higher. I grabbed his wrist, intending to push him away. Instead, I found myself holding on, caught between desire and panic. We can't. Can't what? His other hand brushed my cheek, turning my face toward his. Talk? Breathe? Remember? The plane hit another patch of turbulence, throwing us closer together. His cologne was intoxicating, a scent that brought back memories of stolen kisses and whispered promises. I hate that you still affect me like this, I confessed, watching his pupils dilate. Like what? His thumb brushed my bottom lip. A throat cleared behind us. We sprang apart as the flight attendant appeared. We're landing in 10 minutes, gentlemen. Mr. Wright asked me to wake him upon arrival. Then the plane landed and reality crashed back. Sebastian was still groggy when his father called. Another delay. You two go ahead. Sebastian yawned. I'll catch up tomorrow morning. Got to handle some PR stuff first anyway. Which is how I ended up alone in Vegas with Nicholas Anderson, because apparently the universe wasn't done torturing me. We should check in, I said professionally, wheeling my carry-on through the Bellagio lobby. Separately, in different wings, maybe different hotels. Nicholas caught my wrist, spinning me to face him. Or we could talk about that photo. There's nothing to talk about. But I didn't pull away. No? His thumb traced circles on my pulse point. Because I can't stop thinking about it. About you. Nicholas. One drink, he said softly. Let me explain everything, please. I should have said no, should have gone to my room and called Sebastian. Should have done anything except follow Nicholas to the hotel bar, where one drink turned into 3, and explanations turned into confessions. I never wanted to leave, he said, his knee brushing mine under the bar. But my family, I know. I was buzzed enough to be honest, but you could have told me. I would have understood. Would you have let me go? Of course I wouldn't have let him go, but I didn't tell him that. Instead, I groaned softly, saying, I need some fresh air, Nicholas. The lights of Vegas glittered below us as Nicholas pulled me into a shadowy corner of the rooftop bar. Dance with me. There's no music. He pulled out his phone, offering one earbud. The opening notes of our song filled my ear, the same one we'd slow dance to at that dive bar near campus. This is a bad idea, I whispered, even as I took his hand. The height, the wine, the way he was looking at me, everything felt dangerous. All my best ideas are bad ones. He pulled me closer than strictly necessary, one hand sliding to my lower back. Remember that time I convinced you to sneak into the dean's pool? You mean when we almost got expelled? But I was laughing, my head dropping to his shoulder despite myself. His hand traced up my spine, making me shiver. Worth it. His lips brushed my temple, then trailed to my ear. You're always worth it. I looked up and suddenly our faces were inches apart. The air felt electric, charged with memory and wine and terrible timing. His free hand cupped my jaw, thumb brushing my cheek in a gesture so achingly familiar it hurt. We can't, I breathed, but my hands were already sliding into his hair. I know, he murmured against my lips, but I've never been good at staying away from you. A camera flash exploded from the bar's entrance. We jumped apart as a gossip blogger lowered her phone, grinning triumphantly. Well, she smirked, this should make an interesting follow-up to yesterday's story. Before either of us could react, my phone buzzed. A text from Sebastian. Seen the new photos. We need to talk. All of us. Now. Nicholas and I stared at each other, the unfinished kiss burning between us like a live wire. We go back to our suite, and 2 hours later, Sebastian has arrived. The elevator dinged, and Sebastian walked out. He wasn't alone, and he was holding hands with someone I recognized all too well, my assistant, Devon. Sit down, all of you, Sebastian said, still holding Devon's hand. The Vegas suite suddenly felt very small. I stepped forward, heart racing. Sebastian, let me explain how you and Nicholas have been making hard eyes at each other since day one. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. Or how my fiancé nearly chokes every time someone mentions your name. Nicholas paled. Sebastian, I never meant to fall back in love with Jordan. Sebastian's voice was gentle, or never fell out of love in the first place. Devon squeezed Sebastian's hand and suddenly everything clicked. How long? I asked, looking between them. 6 months, Devon admitted. Remember that charity gala where you sent me to handle the Wright Foundation event because you had food poisoning? I collapsed onto the nearest chair. Oh my God, that's why you've been so calm about all the photos. Sebastian sat across from us, pulling Devon down beside him. I've known something was off since Nicholas first saw you in your office, Jordan. The way he looked at you, it's the same way I look at Devon. But the merger, Nicholas protested. Your father will get his merger. Sebastian assured him. Just like we planned. We get married, merge the companies, wait a respectable amount of time, then have an amicable divorce. Everyone gets what they need. I stared at him. You'd do that? For Nicholas? For all of us. Sebastian smiled. Nicholas saved my family's company during the pandemic. This is me returning the favor. Nicholas made a choked sound. I don't deserve you as a friend. True. Sebastian grinned. You deserve Jordan. The tension in the room finally broke. We spent hours talking, planning, laughing. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I could breathe. But of course, nothing good lasts forever. 2 weeks later at the wedding rehearsal, Nicholas pulled me into the church's vestry. Nicholas's hands were urgent, gripping my hips as he pulled me into the narrow space between a dusty altar and the wall. His breath was hot against my neck, his whispered words sending a shiver down my spine. I can't wait a year, he murmured, his lips grazing the sensitive skin just below my ear. We both know it's wrong, but I can't stop thinking about you. Nicholas, I warned, but my hands were already sliding under his jacket. Someone could... Everyone's at dinner, he breathed against my neck. We have time. His lips found mine and I stopped thinking. 5 years of longing poured into one kiss. His hand slipped under my shirt as mine tangled in his hair, and suddenly we were college kids again, stealing moments between classes. I love you, he whispered against my mouth. I never stopped. Nicholas! The vestry door slammed open. Mr. Wright stood there, his face purple with rage. Behind him, Sebastian and Devon looked horrified. So the rumors are true, Mr. Wright spat. My son's fiancé and the wedding planner. Dad, Sebastian started, let me explain. Explain what? How you've all made a mockery of this merger? He turned to Nicholas. You want to throw away everything? Fine. But remember, one word from me, and both your family's company and Jordan's little wedding planning empire crumble to dust. You can't, I began. Can't I? His smile was cold. Who do you think owns the building where your business operates? Who do you think holds the loans on your father's restaurants, Nicholas? One phone call and it all ends. Nicholas's hand found mine, squeezing tight. The wedding continues as planned, Mr. Wright ordered, or I destroy everything you all hold dear. He stormed out, leaving silence in his wake. Sebastian looked devastated. I'm so sorry. I thought we had more time. I pulled away from Nicholas, my heart breaking all over again. No, I'm sorry. This is all my fault. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my tablet and opened my resignation letter. I'd prepared it days ago, somehow knowing it would end like this. Jordan, don't... Nicholas reached for me. I stepped back, tears burning my eyes. I hereby resign as your wedding planner, effective immediately. Jordan, please. But I was already walking away, leaving my heart in that vestry with the man I couldn't have and the future we'd never get. What I didn't know then was that Sebastian Wright had one more card to play, and it would change everything. I wasn't planning to attend the wedding, but when your best friend sends you a cryptic text saying, "Trust me, wear your best suit, third row, left side, don't be late," you show up. So here I was, watching the love of my life prepare to marry someone else. The irony? I'd planned every perfect detail of this torture. At least Devon had taken over the final arrangements after my dramatic exit last week. Nicholas looked devastating in his tuxedo. Our eyes met across the church, and for a moment, everything else faded away. Then Mr. Wright's pointed cough from the front row snapped us back to reality. Sebastian stood at the altar, radiating calm confidence. He winked at me, then at Devon, who was pretending to adjust flowers while actually dropping what looked suspiciously like USB drives into select guests programs. What were they planning? The wedding march began. Nicholas walked down the aisle, each step looking more like a man approaching execution than eternal happiness. I dug my fingers into my thighs, fighting the urge to grab him and run. Dearly beloved, the officiant began, we are gathered here today. Actually, Sebastian interrupted, his voice carrying through the church. Before we proceed, I'd like to say something. He turned to face the gathered crowd, including dozens of business executives and press. Mr. Wright half rose. "Sebastian?" "The USBs you've just received," Sebastian continued smoothly, "contain proof of illegal business practices spanning 20 years. Tax evasion, insider trading, and my personal favorite, evidence that my father attempted to blackmail 4 people in this room into a sham marriage for his own financial gain." The church erupted in chaos. Reporters frantically opened the drives on their laptops. Mr. Wright lunged for Sebastian, but Devon smoothly stepped between them. "You'll find I've already sent copies to the SEC," Sebastian added. "Oh, and Dad? I own the majority shares now. Turns out your assistant really doesn't like being called Coffee Girl for 15 years. She was very helpful." Nicholas stood frozen at the altar. I couldn't breathe. "So," Sebastian turned to Nicholas with a gentle smile, "I release you from our arrangement. Both our companies will survive, though Dad might need a good lawyer." He glanced at his father, who was now surrounded by murmuring board members. "The real question is, what are you waiting for?" Nicholas turned, his eyes finding mine instantly. The look in them set my heart racing. "Jordan Hayes," he said, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. "I've loved you since you yelled at me for highlighting library books 5 years ago. I loved you when I had to leave to save my family. I loved you every day we were apart, and every torturous day we've been pretending not to know each other." He started walking toward me. "I'm done pretending." I stood, my legs shaking. "Nicholas, marry me instead." The church gasped collectively. I laughed, tears streaming down my face. "That's the worst proposal ever." "I know." He reached me, taking my hands. "I'll do better later, with a proper ring and maybe fewer scandalized socialites watching. But right now, run away with me." "Yes," I breathed. "God, yes." His kiss tasted like freedom and future and 5 years of waiting. The church exploded in applause, led, of course, by Sebastian and Devon. "I have a confession," Sebastian said later, at what was supposed to be his reception but had turned into an impromptu engagement party for 2 different couples. "I hired Jordan as my wedding planner on purpose. I knew about you two from old college photos, and when I found out about Dad's blackmail, well, I figured either you'd kill each other or finally fix what broke 5 years ago." "You're insane," I told him, but I couldn't stop smiling. Nicholas's arm was warm around my waist, and this time he wasn't going anywhere. "Speaking of insane," Devon chimed in, showing us his phone, "you're trending again, but this time," he grinned, "Always Love Wins is #1 worldwide." Nicholas pulled me closer. "Think you can plan another wedding? A real one this time?" I pretended to consider it. "I don't know, my rates are pretty high." "I'll pay you in kisses." "That's very unprofessional, Mr. Anderson." "Good thing I'm not just a client anymore, Mr. Hayes." I looked around at our laughing friends, the chaos of reporters outside, and the man I'd loved for 5 years finally, properly mine. "No," I agreed, pulling him down for another kiss. "You're my happy ending." 6 months later. "Ready?" Sebastian adjusted my bow tie, grinning. I took a deep breath, looking at myself in the mirror. This time, everything was perfect. This time, I was marrying the right person. "Just one thing first," I said, pulling out my phone. Opening Instagram, I typed, "To the mystery photographer who caught us in that supply closet. Thank you. Sometimes love needs a little push or a viral scandal." Wedding planner gets his own HEA. Nicholas was waiting at the altar, and this time when the wedding march played, every step felt like coming home. The end. And would you ever crash a wedding for the love of your life? You like this story? Subscribe to join Rain's Corner. Mua.